turned to my producing partner, who is also recording sound, Rachel Falcone, and I'm like, "Yo, we need to put on our gas masks and helmets. It's about to get real."
I'm speaking today with Michael Premo, the director of Homegrown. Michael, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me. I love your site, so it's a pleasure to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. That means a lot. And honestly, I love your film. It's terrifying, and still so fresh. I am struck by the fact that this is a documentary, and which sounds odd, but hear me out. So you're filming with these gentlemen before it happens. So
That's right.
how did Homegrown come to be? What was the original intent?
So the idea really kind of started to take shape in 2016 and 2017, and we really started rolling in 2018. And it was born out of a reaction to try to understand the backlash to Obama, to try to understand the sort of widening chasm that was we saw emerging in American political life. And in particular, I was really struck by the amount of alignment that was happening across the conservative movement, certainly across the movement in general. There was this sort of reorganization happening in American political life, but there was so many different types of sort of conservative thought that was finding alignment in a way that had never found alignment before. And we knew, or we didn't know, but we imagined that based on what we were seeing, that there was the potential for something explosive to happen. Of course, we could have never imagined what happened, but there was something bubbling. And so we wanted to be at the center of what was bubbling. And so that really kind of motivated us how we went to try to find people, how to get access, and who we wanted to talk to and try to follow to see where it would lead.
It really is unbelievable. I mean, the events of January 6th are the type of things that leave scars on a nation for sure. And leading up to it, and well, during as well, you're spending a lot of time with the Proud Boys, members of the Proud Boys, and hearing you involved in these conversations with them. What surprised you most about the time that you spent with them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that surprised me over the course of making this film was what drives people, what motivates people to join a movement, to get out of their house, to get away from their keyboard, to get out in the street. I think there's the perception that people are driven by like maybe a policy that they want passed or some sort of deep ideology. But for 90% of the people that we encountered, it was just people looking for community. It was just people looking for meaning, just people looking for purpose. We live in this world where, and particularly in American society, where the scales are so tipped in favor of corporations and billionaires at the expense of working and middle class people, and people feel so uncertain, both economically but also culturally. People are looking for meaning. People are looking to like connect with their heritage or connect with an identity, regardless of who they are. And that's what's driving people. And that really surprised me. I wasn't fully prepared for that level of nuance to be sort of driving the everyday participants in these movements.
See, that's fascinating to me. And I will say I want to be careful how I frame this here because I could come out the wrong way. Bear with me. There are glimpses of conversations that in moments that feel like they're trying to take place, and especially in the early going of this film, like there's the gentleman who I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, that is discussing with the head of the Black Lives Matter movement, and they're trying to reach across the aisle, and things obviously continue to escalate to dangerous levels. Um, it's fascinating to see how that like what was that moment like for you, like those conversations, because it is a very interesting place for this film to begin.
Yeah, so the character, the participant in the film you're referencing, his name is Thad, and Thad is a person of color. He's Latino, and he is somebody who has been the target or the victim of police racial profiling. He was attacked by a cop, and he talks about it in the film, and that has sort of motivated his desire to to have police reform, and he's someone who doesn't think it's systemic. It's not a systemic problem for him. It's a few bad apples, and he was feeling exhausted by what he felt like was a lack of action around police reform. So he set out to find people who might be able to like form an unlikely alliance that just by its sheer unlikeliness might be able to like move some gears. And so he reached out to Black Lives Matter activists in his area. And he is just somebody who was a member of the Proud Boys, and he's reaching out to Black Lives Matter activists to like be like, hey, look, we share this common thing. Maybe we can get together. And that was fascinating.
Based on your time with the Proud Boys, with people like that, and I think his name was Chris.
Mhm.
Um, do you have any more insight into this religious devotion to right-wing politics? Because there a lot of times that's what we hear is people using that as a basis for their actions.
Yeah, I think what I've experienced with these social movements is very often it becomes people's identity. People just sort of like make it, it's like from the clothes you're wearing to the type of car you're driving to the hat you wear to your shoe choices. There's this sort of like because it's American society where consumerism becomes part of your identity, where there are so many people that like for them it becomes wrapped up in who they are, and that sort of drives people again more so sometimes than the ideology or the policies. And I feel like it's because they find a friend group. It's because they find
Um,
people who sort of like, reflect back what they're feeling. They have the same grievances and they point to the same enemies, and that gives them community. And that drives people as much as anything else that I've experienced.
it's incredible, and of course, I mean, we have to. The film has incredible footage of the Capitol on January 6th. Um, I want to ask you about your experience with this, but before we do, and this, forgive me, as I'm watching the film, I wanted to know if you had any insight because it looks like, people are getting aggressive, people are getting intense, but then all of a sudden, storm the Capitol comes up as a hashtag. Like it just seems like there's a leap that's taken. Do we know definitively how it began, or is it just sort of one person's idea and it spread like wildfire?
So, yeah, it's great you're talking about that. I really appreciate the question. Um, and what we try to show in the film is an angle of this history that hasn't really been widely covered. And so, through the course of the film, you see people sort of increasingly sort of become convinced by this sort of message they're being fed by the so-called experts that the election is stolen, and their recourse to address that is exhausted. There's like, dozens, maybe not, maybe 100 different court cases where that again are shot down because of lack of evidence, because there is no credible evidence to suggest that this is happening, but people are still convinced. And so after they exhaust all means, it becomes almost inevitable that they're going to try to intervene on the final step of the electoral process, which is the certification of the electoral college votes. And it really was President Trump's tweet around Christmas time of 2020, where he tweeted this tweet, this now infamous tweet, January 6th is the last stop. It will be wild. People are coming. That's not verbatim what the tweet is, but that's exactly the essence of it. And from that moment on, what reverberated across social media was storm the Capitol, storm the Capitol, storm the Capitol. That bubbles up from social media almost instantly is repeated on cable news, on the big stations and the smaller stations. And it just becomes repeated until it happens.
And it's terrifying to see it as close. What was that experience like for you? Because I mean, I mean, we've seen lots of footage, but this is incredibly personal. What was that
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, I mean it was incredibly moving. I think because it was planned so publicly, we didn't think that any protester would get anywhere close to the US Capitol. I've seen lots of different protests in Washington, D.C. As you can imagine, the US government has a very sophisticated, multi-layered system of dealing with protests. And I've seen other protests sort of happen in DC, and the United States Capitol is completely surrounded by these large gates that are kind of mobilized and overnight, and they have these large dump trucks that also haul snow. They're all part of this process of like preventing people getting anywhere near the US Capitol. So we assumed that the Capitol Police and the Parks Police would have made the decision, since it was so clearly messaged on Fox News, in social media, that the plan was to storm the Capitol. We didn't think that anyone would get close to the Capitol. We filmed probably 70% of this film wearing gas masks and bulletproof helmets and bulletproof vests. And on that day, we had our gas masks and our helmets, but they weren't on even in the morning of January 6th, because we just didn't think that we were going to get anywhere close. But it was really, as we're following Chris as he's joining his friends and other compatriots who really wanted to be on the vanguard of storming the Capitol. At this point in the morning, President Trump hadn't even given his speech, and already they're gathering at the base of the Capitol, ready to kind of move in. And I'm looking at the walkway that leads into the Capitol, and there's no barricades. There's just these little bike rack barricades kind of sporadically across the lawn. And there we see a few cops sort of walking around, but they're just kind of in their everyday winter clothing. They don't have any special riot gear or anything. And we see the crowd approach these police. And I saw somebody punch this woman cop, this woman protester punched this woman cop, and she kind of reeled and backed up and kind of retreated farther down the path. And at that moment, I turned to my producing partner, who was also recording sound, Rachel Falcone, and I'm like, "Yo, we need to put on our gas masks and helmets. It's about to get real. Like, the Parks Police, the Capitol Police have no riot gear prepared for this massive crowd that was planned very publicly about to storm the Capitol." And that was absolutely, we weren't surprised because we knew it was going to happen, but it was absolutely shocking. We were not prepared for it actually happening, at least like psychologically.
I don't know how you prepare for that.
Hmm.
I mean, even the people who were there were not prepared for that. I mean, I actually appreciate about this film too that after we see the aftermath, we hear their conversations afterwards, the after effects. Chris, especially with his family, it is incredibly powerful, Michael. Honestly, I know we're out of time, but thank you so much. This is an incredibly moving and terrifying film in every way, shape, and form. But it's an absolute must see. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you so much for the information and affirmation about the film. It means a lot, and I really admire the work you do on Screenfish. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that, Michael. Thank you so much. Have a great day.